Joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show, MLB insider from the worldwide leader in sports with opening day around the corner. Our friend Jeff Passan is back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Jeff?
Living the dream, Rich. How are you?
I am doing fine. Just the ground rules for this conversation. If you are not ready to answer my questions at the 8-second mark, we're going to have a problem, okay? There's going to be an issue in this conversation. There's a question clock or an answer clock in this conversation, just to keep the pace of the interview going. If that makes any sense.
Here's the thing. I was going to actually have an 8-second pause on air there, but thankfully you filibustered long enough for me to get ready to answer everything and anything you've got. So fire away, Capitan.
Okay, brother. I'm a pace of play guy. I understand. I'm also a guy that loves baseball games to take as long as they take. I know I'm a 53-year-old guy, so I'm out of the demo. But I don't think there's a soul on the planet. I tweeted this out over the week. I don't think there's a soul on the planet who wants to see a baseball game end with a walk-off pitch clock violation. Not a soul. And we saw it in college, and we saw it in the first few days of spring training. I give you the floor on baseball's thought process and how you see this playing out for the first couple weeks, months of the season coming up.
There are going to be 2,430 games played in Major League Baseball this season, Rich.
Okay.
And if one of them happens to end on a pitch clock violation, which I don't think that's going to be the case, but if one of them happens to end on that, and that is what needs to happen in service of everyone following the rules and really buying into this idea that the pitch clock is good for baseball, I'm willing to make that sacrifice for one game to end like that, or two or three, or whatever it is. I think the net positive that is going to come from the pitch clock, long-term especially, in a sport that has been, if we're being honest about where baseball is in the landscape right now, it is not the NFL, it is not the NBA, and there's a good argument it's not college football, certainly, and there's an argument to be made that college basketball is, if not on the plane with it, then right there alongside it. Baseball needed to do something to address the fact that the reputation that the game has earned, not been given, but earned over the last 25 years, is that it's just too damn slow. And I don't know that manifests itself necessarily, Rich, in time of game. I think time of game is sort of illustrative of that, but to me, it's as much the pace as it is the time itself. And baseball had turned into a really plodding game without a ton of action in it. And I think this, the pitch clock in particular, but also the other rules that have been put in place alongside it, are going to go a long way to solving the problem both of time of game as well as the pace.
Now, and I was talking earlier on my program, Jeff, that in the NFL there's always a hue and cry during the preseason where rules are enforced strictly to try and set a standard and players adjust. I totally get it, but just give me one game. Yep. Heaven forbid that one game, Sunday night, your network, Yankees, Red Sox, game over. I mean, seriously. And then that one game matters as to who wins the division or not. All it does take is one game for this thing to be. So I don't know, man. It just seems ridiculous.
Listen. I get your perspective, but I also think that there's a short-sightedness to it because baseball had to do something. And look, they've tried in the past. Remember when when umpires were told keep batters in the batter's box and let's quicken the game up that way? Remember how long that lasted? Yeah, you don't remember because it didn't last long at all. Like, the guys just straight up ignored it and stopped caring about it. Major League Baseball kind of shrugged its shoulders and was like, well, guess there's nothing we can do about it now because players aren't on board. You need buy-in from everyone, and I think when it comes to the pitch clock, there is going to be enough buy-in where hopefully it is front of mind for the players in those key seminal high leverage moments so that they don't make the mistake, because everybody knows the rules. The players particularly know the rules and will have spent time in both spring training and early in the regular season adjusting themselves and contorting themselves to follow them. And eventually it's just going to be muscle memory. You know, you're going to have that internal clock in your head that tells you if you're a batter, it's time for me to get in the box and look up. You're going to have that internal clock if you're a catcher, knowing you have to be there when the clock hits 9 inside of the painted lines. And if you're a pitcher, you're going to have that internal clock through hundreds and hundreds of reps, thousands once the season gets going, of, okay, this is how I need to go out and execute my pitches. And
so so we can educate everybody, including myself, it is what the rule is: player must be in the batter's box ready for the pitch by the 8-second mark of a clock that's 15 seconds long. Is that how this works here, Jeff? That's correct. And ready is essentially in your stance and head up facing the pitcher. So, you know, Max Scherzer talked about it yesterday after his start. Like, he was ready before the hitter sometimes, and when the hitter would look up, he would go into his delivery. And he sees the pitch clock, which, by the way, Max Scherzer was not a fan of at first, but he sees it as something that he can use to his advantage, and he can mess with hitters' timing that way. And you know what? That's great. Like, the fact that there is a potential strategic element to this, I think, really aligns with what baseball is about. Baseball is that mental game. Baseball is that game where strategy comes into play so often, and the fact that players are already trying to leverage that, I think, is fantastic, because it lends some gravitas to the rules, right? Sometimes these rules get implemented and it just looks like the Wizard of Oz speaking from behind the curtain and saying, you will follow the pitch clock. No, it's you will follow the pitch clock, but hey, use it to your advantage too, because it's something that can be advantaged. Well, then what about runners on? Can't runners use this to their advantage, knowing how many times a pitcher can throw over or anything like that? I mean, what about runners? 100%. I mean, pitchers. So another new rule is there are only 2 disengagements from the rubber, and the disengagement is either a pickoff attempt or a step off. If a pitcher has used his 2 disengagements, and he's the sort of guy who tends to hold on to the ball toward the end of the clock, you know that runners are going to be timing it, and that they're going to feel like even if they don't want to take an enormous lead, they may take an extra step and they may get an early jump on it. And then the pitcher has a decision, because if he throws over to first base a third time to try and pick a guy off and doesn't do it, that's a balk. So the runner, or if there's a runner on third base, you know, the runners get to advance the base automatically, and that's just part of how things are going now. You know, the Major League Baseball, when it was implementing these rules, was really trying to get back to what baseball looked like in terms of pace in the 70s and 80s. And the 70s and 80s, remember, were the time when Rickey Henderson was stealing more than 1,000 bases, and Vince Coleman was putting up 100+ stolen bases a year. There was a level of athleticism in the game that exists in the athletes themselves, but is frowned upon by teams with the stolen base, because you have to be successful 75% or more of the time to even make stealing bases worth it. I think that calculus is definitely going to change between the lack of disengagement as well as the smaller distance between the bases, 4.5 inches shorter, which it doesn't seem like a lot. It's not a lot, but man, when it's a bang-bang play, it could feel like a mile. Well, look, and again, I'm not against the idea here, Jeff, because, you know, sure, it will get exciting for fans in the stands when they see a clock winding down, or they think that the clock ran out, you know, and the pitch should have been delivered, or the clock is running out and the guy didn't have his head up, and there'll be lots of action in the stands looking at a clock. I understand that, and I understand, you know, wanting to speed things up, but I will hate it if a game ends on a walk-off pitch count violation, or a guy is out, you know, with nobody out, 2 on, and then somebody's out. Yep. So in the ninth, and again, I know the games, doesn't matter, first, ninth inning. What about turning the clock off in the ninth inning? What about that idea? What about doing that?
I asked about that yesterday and was told by someone at Major League Baseball that it was a complete non-starter, and they're not even considering the possibility.
No, wait.
And
I mean, just wait. Just wait. Just wait.
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
Rich, it's one of those things where we'll see, right? Like, if there are enough violations and people are up in arms and players start complaining about it and say, hey, we need it off in the ninth inning, Major League Baseball needs to at least be open-minded about this, because considering the level of change that they have in place, what's the likelihood that they get everything right the first time around? It's not great. And that's not to suggest that Major League Baseball is consistently fumbling things. It's just the reality of the world. When you make a bunch of changes in your life, how often do all of them turn out the way that you were anticipating? The answer is they don't. That's just not the way things work. So I think as long as Major League Baseball is open-minded about the possibility of adjusting things, then we're going to be okay. But if they're stubborn and are not listening to widespread fan feedback, and I don't know that the fan feedback necessarily aligns with you entirely, Rich. I think, as far as I can tell from social media, and everyone knows that, social media is a perfect reflection of the world, they're pretty split on this. What the most interesting part of it has been to me?
What's that?
The people who have been complaining about the pitch clock have not been the ones that I would have anticipated. I would have thought that the complaints would have come from longtime fans who think that this is a bastardization of the game that they know, who say baseball is the only game without a clock, it should stay that way. And there's some element of that. But more than that, there's been this cognitive dissonance among like 15 to 25-year-olds. And I was like, in my mind, they were going to be open-minded because they're younger and because they're more open to change. But it occurred to me when I saw this, oh my God, they've never seen what a real baseball game looks like. They've never seen baseball where guys aren't messing around on the mound or unvelcroing their batting gloves. They haven't seen that baseball from the 70s and 80s. That's crisp, that's clean, that's quick, that's action-packed. And so this is a shock to the system for them. Well, it's like, oh, my God, what happened to this sport that I fell in love with? What are they trying to do with it? And that's a fascinating part of this that I had not anticipated.
Another fascinating part of it is how we're going to take the game in, because I saw your tweet as well that the pitch clock is not going to be visible right behind home plate like it is in some spring training facilities. And, there's going to be, I guess, a box on the screen, another aspect of watching a game where it's a graphic of something. We're going to see a clock, like a shot clock, the entire game.
I just assumed that it was going to be on the scoreboard, like the shot clock or like the play clock at football.
Okay,
that to me seems to make the most sense. Our first game of the year on ESPN, we're broadcasting today.
Okay,
1:00 Eastern, Cardinals Mets. I'm excited to see how we handle that.
Okay. And Jeff Passan here on the Rich Eisen Show. A couple more minutes left with the MLB Insider. Just real quick, some quick hitters. I saw some games this weekend, and I saw a left-handed hitter hit a liner into right field, and it hit the ground. And I'm like, shouldn't there be a third baseman standing there to just catch it on a I mean, like, am I seeing the shift actually lead to hits? Did I see that over the weekend, Jeff? Did I see it?
I've never been a huge opponent of the shift.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've always thought that it was just going to bring singles back, and, people aren't coming to the ballpark for singles. But at the same time, when a ball gets hit on the screws and because of defensive positioning, a guy just happens to be there, I looked at that as much as, hey, good for the defense. Good for the scouting, good for the numbers, allowing you to put your guys in positions where they can execute a play. But the other side of the coin, I completely understand why a left-handed pull hitter singling to right field is music to many people's ears.
But Jeff, let's put everything that we've just discussed together. Yes, you're not coming for singles, but you're seeing a runner on and a pitch clock going down, and now that guy's going to be taking a lead, and now with the bases being larger, maybe that guy steals a base, and then maybe somebody actually hits one in the gap, and we see action, and it's not strikeout, walk, home run, and a game that moves along. Because the shift will open it all up. How about that? Right?
There is no good counter to that, Rich. You're 100% right. Like, it aligns with everything that they're trying to do. As somebody who has a deep appreciation for incredible defensive plays, maybe I'm just being a little sensitive to the defenders and their ability to put outs up on the board. But, what you say right there, listen, more guys on base is more action. More action is good for the game. So it's why when it comes to the shift, I wasn't against banning it. I wasn't for banning it, but I can see the benefits certainly on both sides.
Okay, and lastly, where did the Jeff Passan here on the Rich Eisen Show, lastly for you, where did all the money from San Diego come from? What is happening with the Padres, who now have extended Manny Machado, and does everyone on? I know I'm asking multiple questions. Does everyone on San Diego have a 10+ year, $300+ million contract? I mean, it's just what's happening.
Yes, it's incredible how they were able to do that. I think what's happening is twofold here.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, it's really amazing, Rich, what happens when an owner prioritizes winning. Really incredible to see Peter Seidler coming out and saying, you know what, I'm in a small media market. My television revenue is, a fraction of what the Dodgers 90 miles up the coast are. And I don't give a damn because I want to win the first World Series in franchise history, and I'm going to bring in and keep around the best players who give me the best chance of doing so. Such a novel concept, trying to win. And not trying to make a profit. And the Padres certainly on a year-over-year basis are going to lose money. There's just not enough revenue coming in, even with the sellouts, even with a season ticket list that had to be cut off because there was too much demand, even with only one major professional sport in the city. They're still going to lose money because the payroll is obscenely high. But what the Padres have done, Rich, is very simple. They've taken some of the equity from their growth and from the growth of professional sports teams across the landscape, where you see, a portion of the Milwaukee Bucks selling for $3.5 billion valuation today, when less than a decade ago they were bought for $550 million. Well, that appreciation's happened with the Padres too. Bought for $800 million in 2012. Would easily sell for over $2 billion today. And the Padres said, you know what, we're going to take a chunk of that, and we're going to bring in a strategic partner who's going to give us cash, and we're going to reinvest that cash in the actual product, which is on-field players. And that reinvestment, we hope, is going to help build our brand, continue to build our awareness, and more than anything, build a championship caliber ball club. And if we do happen to win the World Series, then the returns on that investment are going to be absolutely incredible, long-term and short-term.
And then, of course, Ohtani will top that list by a large margin. Before I let you go, walk me through.
Padres are going to be in on him too, Rich.
Oh, my gosh. And then Soto, they're going to have to pay Soto too. So walk me through the timeline in your mind. Is the trade deadline a trigger? Is opening day a trigger? What's the Ohtani timeline for you for a new contract or trade this year in 2023?
Well, my personal Ohtani timeline is that every day is a Shohei Ohtani day. But in terms of extension, I don't see the Angels getting anything done. Frankly, I think he's too close to free agency, and there's too much out there in order for him to stick around with a team that he doesn't know if it's going to be very good. And here's the truth: if the Angels stink, or even if they're just sort of mid this year, I could see him moving at the trade deadline, because if he's going to leave there, and I think the odds are probably more in favor of Shohei Ohtani ending up somewhere else next year than being back with the Los Angeles Angels. You better get as much for him as you possibly can, because I'm sorry, but one draft pick for Shohei, one compensatory draft pick for Shohei Ohtani leaving, that ain't a good deal.
So do the Mets give up Axe Capital for him? Is that what it is? Is that what they have to do, Jeff? What a bonanza that would be.
I mean, Rich, if Ohtani stays healthy and performs anywhere close to the way he's done over the last 2 years,
yes,
the number is going to start at 500.
I can't wait. Jeff Passan, have a great rest of February, because I'm calling you in March, which is just the other day. So I look forward to that. Look for more of my phone calls. Can't wait. Thanks for the time here, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Glad you got it in on the pitch clock, Rich.
We did. We got it in. It's safe, and we can now complete the rest of the interview, which is right now. Thanks for the call, Jeff. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.